There are infinite possibilities of where pleasure can grow. So the skill there is then to expand the pleasure in a area where then another action can take place after pleasure gets expanded, maybe into your thigh. Like maybe observe it going into your chest. Maybe observe it going through your finger to another person's. Maybe in your partner's body, she's experiencing or he's experiencing pleasure, and that can travel through your hand. What are the sensations? So it's sensitizing yourself. That's the skill number one.
My name is Nobin John, your host. I believe that we live among superheroes. Many a times we walk past them not knowing because of our busy schedules. This podcast is my journey to find such individuals, bring them on board, and have meaningful conversation to unravel the biohacks and lifestyle hacks that they have used to optimize well-being and realize their fullest potential. In many of these hacks will lie the solution for us to look better, perform better, and live longer. Welcome to the Zuperhuman Podcast. So my guest today is Hani. Hani is a transformation coach that I worked with thousands of people around the world to create impactful change. Now she's here and we're going to talk to her on how she's able to do this in her own unique way. So Hani, how are you doing today?
Super good.
Amazing. I love the energy you're bringing on board. So straight into the topic. In Asia, we're all chasing success. And we were always thinking about ways in which we can transform our lives and our lifestyles to achieve success. Success for a lot of people could mean different things. It could mean fame, wealth, or looks in Hong Kong. And that's the truth. And that is worth living for, I would say. But many a times, what I believe that is wrongly associated with success or is thought about as key to success is hard work. But if you were to just pause on this and sit on it for some time and just say that word again, hard work. It's work, isn't it? Work, I believe, needs fuel. And you bring about a different angle to fuel success. And something that has never been talked about on this podcast, sexual energy. For me, as a host today, I am a bit nervous. Let me be honest about it. But I know it is one of those areas that holds huge potentials if tapped into correctly.
And with respect. And sexual energy can be beyond just the erotic energy that we all feel. It could be something that is a full embodiment of confidence, a full embodiment of pleasure, a full embodiment of who you are in your body. So it's not just your brain, right? Intellectually, we love putting people with 400 degrees or like multiple degrees on a pedestal. But what about the ability to fully live and speak from your entire body? And sexuality and being connected through your sex is actually an incredible way of increasing your executive presence, increasing your communication skills, and also increasing your ability to connect with another human being, which gets so many things done.
I mean, it still boggles my mind. And for the viewers, all right, I'm just going to take it a step back. How would you define conscious sexual energy?
So consciousness is described as being extremely aware, and awareness is described as presence, right? Presence is something that when our attention is able to be clear and in this moment, not in the past, not in the future, but in this moment. So conscious success or conscious sexuality is being able to the flow of energy that is an energy of aliveness, of a tingling sensation, and a sensation that can be generated from our genitals or even the tingling sensations on our skin, and being able to breathe into that and relax, putting us into a parasympathetic nervous system. Or when you're in an arousal state in a more vibrant energetic field. And so conscious success is the ability to choose to experience all parts of your body in the moment while, or conscious sexuality, while doing the things that you're wanting to do. So it fuels that because it creates a source of battery, an energy field that allows you to have a conversation, think about new ideas, be more innovative, be more creative. It's actually creativity.
Wow. So if I'm hearing this correct, you're actually using sex as a tool to generate energy to fuel productivity.
That can be put that way. That's one of the ways.
Okay.
Even though that is not. So that is absolutely one of the ways in which we can do that. And a really key point to that is actually looking at it from a perspective of non-goal orientation.
Okay.
So that goes into the details of it. But yes, we're using what we're calling pleasure energy and sensation and the uninhibited and loving space that we're creating this energy from and allowing that to create more.
Okay. So in this busy lifestyle that we're living, what is robbing us of this ability to do so?
Just the go, go, go. The overemphasis on doing and the checklists, the many things that are on our to-do list, the overlapping schedules of all of the stuff. It doesn't allow us to actually fall into the moment and have a moment to breathe with each other, to fully look into each other's eyes. And the sexual energy or intimacy, in other words, can also be described as the moment that you're sharing with the other person or yourself. It doesn't have to be erotic, even though that is totally a potent way of experiencing it. It can also be a moment of just an honest, conscious, honest level of connection that you're experiencing in the moment. Nothing more and nothing less.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing, I think in our busy lifestyles, because we're in a go, go, go attitude, we kind of doing this whole sex or using the energy that we could tap into by having conscious sex or consensual sex wrongly.
We're doing it faster. We're doing it based on behaviors and programs or patterns that we've done before. Or people are doing it based on what they've watched and their expectations. It's still performative.
Okay. So does that, what they watch, come from watching movies?
I mean, movies is definitely a way to have that. But think about your sexual education.
Right.
There is no school that I've seen that actually talks about sex from a perspective of conscious sexuality. A lot of teenagers, or whenever you start watching or reading erotica, these are all fantastical representations. Porn, hardcore porn. These are all fantastical representations of what sex actually can be. It's one lens through an algorithm that is trying to gain the most views possible by showing you, extraordinarily large penises and people who are able to multiply their orgasms by a ton of times, and this is all performance, right? But what is an authentic actual experience where you can experience that same level of connection and love making, sharing that love while being also intentional about it? So connecting not only from an emotional standpoint, a physical sensation standpoint, fully being there for each other, and also in a spiritual aspect where you become one.
Wow. From the talks,
Yeah.
I kind of understand tapping into sexual energy and maybe doing this correctly is a kind of a skill.
Yes.
Tell me more about it. How is this skill, or how can I, let's be honest about it.
Yes.
How can I tap into this untapped area and use or develop this skill to be able to do so?
Okay, so the skill takes practice.
Okay.
And the skill takes awareness that it exists.
Right.
And the skill also takes into account the multidimensional aspects of love and sexuality.
Wow.
So the skill is being able to understand what that energy is, and then a practice, many practices to create liberation in that area. So one way you can do it is by using breath work, which you're familiar with already, to tap into that space and breathe into it. So that is called expansion of the pleasure. Understanding that pleasure doesn't only, the script is not, I get hard, I rub myself and I ejaculate. Like that's a very 1, 2, 3 script, but there are infinite possibilities of where pleasure can grow. So the skill there is then to expand the pleasure in a area where then another action can take place after pleasure gets expanded, maybe into your thigh. Like maybe observe it going into your chest. Maybe observe it going through your finger to another person's. Maybe in your partner's body, she's experiencing or he's experiencing pleasure, and that can travel through your hand. What are the sensations? So it's sensitizing yourself. That's the skill number 1. And skill number 2 is communication. And skill number 3 is attunement. So communication, it's about not listening to fix something, not listening to act. It's listening purely to be there with the person and trusting that you purely being there to understand them in the context of that allows safety and trust to arise.
Right.
And so communication from a space of embracing that moment as opposed to, okay, like we need to do something. And that leads to co-creation where communication on both sides can be stating, okay, this feels really good. This feels like at a 8 or 9 pleasure point right now. But hey, that to me feels like at a level 2 out of 10 pleasure right now. How can we bring that to a 10? Okay, how does this work? How does this work? Okay, like that way. So you're really like co-creating a space where nothing is wrong. Right. Nothing is shameful. Hey, like the thought of you just saying, put the dishes away or like wash the dishes just came through my mind and it turned my arousal from a 10 to a 5. Can we just breathe together for a moment so that we can take care of that, that thought that flew through so I can come back in this present moment? Communication. Right. Communication is about noticing any little thing in your mind, which is consciousness, that flies through and being able to come back to the present moment, mindfulness. Right. So that's communication in a way that maximizes the ability to stay connected in this energy field of total presence and clarity. And attunement is the ability to notice your nervous system, your sensations. Are you tense? Have you checked out? Sometimes you get into a rhythm, and that rhythm is extremely similar to the rhythm that you've practiced. And did your body and your brain just check out, and you're in this other space instead of right here with that person? Right. Are you able to look into the eyes of the other person or even be with yourself when you're self-pleasuring while the orgasm happens? Can you breathe and be in that moment? And that is presence. And that is understanding your nervous system at a level of nuance, like minuscule detail. Right. And being able to really be there with every molecule of pleasure that's running through your body when that's happening. And that creates, where attention goes, energy flows. And that creates your power to be able to harness this and then move it, right? And so that's the skills. So yeah, so redefining what sexuality is to you and what it can create and connecting that with presence is one. And then being able to expand pleasure through your presence and attention on the sensations in your body allows for you to have more skills and mastery over that. Of course, knowing also when and where to remove things that are in the way of your space is a high ninja level skill to be able to do without ignoring it. Bringing presence to it. And then the third thing, communicate. Communicate in a way that it increases pleasure. Have every piece of communication build intimacy, build connection, build trust. Right. So when you're having all of these points together, you're able to create a safe and trusting container where both parties are able to rest and flow can happen, creativity can happen, spontaneous improv dances can happen where you don't know where one begins and where the other ends. And it is almost like you're watching your bodies move in a way that you're like, holy moly, like, did you see that? Like, did this just happen? And that's a place of magic. Humans live to create magic, right? Like when you can create a space and a container and a setting that allows for safety, trust, and commitment to happen to this process, growth eventually happens, healing happens. You can dissolve pain and trauma in a container where you also train those skills. So you can use this container as a multi-pronged approach to growth.
I love what you just said. And it truly seems like an area that of course, personally, I feel like there's a lot of work to be put in.
Yes, there's a lot.
But that's what living is for. If there is an area, or I love the way you said about it as a massive container where you can build this energy by doing or engaging yourself in sexual or in practices that actually you can derive or gain sexual energy in order to go out there and do things that you really want to do with more energy to achieve fulfillment. Now, honey, I'm just going to hone in on that second bit or the second point that you mentioned on communication, especially coming in from an Asian background and in living in an Asian environment. This is always a problem and always something that acts as a roadblock. And I love the way you put a communication perspective to this in order to get more bang for the buck, if I would say. As you would say, how do we overcome an element of fear in order to communicate so openly with our partners and even go to that beautiful way of rating? And I mean, for me, I was like, wow, if I was able to do that, like to rate different experiences or different motions and get a feedback and get into a co-creative space, bin everything out and look at being in the moment and working towards not having a goal or a destination, but still creating an experience where I'm able to achieve more.
We can both have a 10 out of 10 experience because we're knowing where each other are in that moment. Communication. Yes, communication is a topic that is so hard for some because in the Asian society especially, communication is not direct.
Yeah, there is fear. Let's be honest about it.
There is fear.
We fear.
And fear comes from so many sources. The biggest blocks to communicating openly and honestly is the fear of not being accepted, of being abandoned. If you say something I don't like, you're going to leave. That's the fear. The fear of not being loved. If I say something that you don't like, I'm going to lose love. And the risk of that is so high that one person would rather lie or ignore or even deny that communication than to be present. And you can see that when people dodge questions or when people don't feel safe. And
Right.
the antidote of that is non-judgment. Non-judgment, this is just one of many, right? Possible antidotes. But we have like 200 different blocks that we help people transcend before they're even ready to go into the space. This space that we're describing in communication, it's like high level advanced communication
Right.
because you don't have triggers that make you feel less good, unworthy. You're not self-criticizing. You're not paranoid about whether you're being judged in every single second. All of that is possible to go away. And the antidote to that is to create a safe space with your partner or with the person in that session or even with yourself so that you know that as yourself, you're not judging yourself. That person is not judging you. And the goal for this container, let's say in a sexual context, is to create the most pleasure for each other. I have a
Right.
thing where in the beginning of each session, people describe what it is that they actually desire to experience. And if you can make that goal more important than the fear of totally being booted out of the situation
Right.
and support each other's boundaries, desires, meanings, and triggers that may come up, then it's much easier to communicate that way.
And it completely makes sense because how I look at fear is, and I've said this many times on this podcast, is false emotions appearing real.
Yeah.
And one of the key reasons to false emotions appearing real is lack of communication. And that can be communication to yourself because you're not addressing the area that you really have to unpack, or communication maybe in this context with the partner that, okay, we could discuss and make this a pleasurable journey, if I may say, over time or even in this space that we are. But engaging and daring to do so, I think, is a much better way to eliminate this fear element, which of course exists. Let's be honest about it. Exists in every bedroom, in every engagement, maybe with our partner or with our loved ones. And it always something that always exists with us also if we do not maybe dare to communicate, even after the whole experience is over, which now thinking about it is such an energy drainer because then you go out and you're thinking, wow, I'm not sure if that was good enough. And then it could have all been over if this whole safe space environment was created boldly with a communicative approach, and you just had fun with the communication to do better.
And don't make it about you, right? When someone communicates something, if that triggers something in you, don't make it about you. We talked about communication earlier on as a point of communicating to understand versus communicating to be right, or communicating to fill a level of fear of not being accepted. So if they're communicating something that might hurt your ego, a very, very, very practical response is thank you.
Right. That is something that would take practice.
That is the skill. Yeah. Don't care what is happening inside of you. Maybe like alarm bells are ringing. Maybe this person just told you something that is absolutely insane, intense, whatever. Be with that. Process that on yourself, in yourself, and see if there's a way. And if you already have established like that safe container with them, and you know that this is someone you want to commit to in terms of creating that trust and build that trust, then you got to trust that this communication, our goal is to see if this piece of communication can bring us closer. So I'm going to resolve all the shit that's happening in my body, all the things that is putting me into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses, get out of that sympathetic nervous system, put myself back using breathwork into the parasympathetic nervous system, and I'm going to be here and say thank you and bring myself back into the present moment. That is mastery. And if we can do that in a way that is true and authentic, then say that. And if not, then be like, okay, I need to take a break right now, and I just need to have a moment and then do whatever you need to do. Have a strategy to deal with this, and then come back and be like, okay, let's continue. I'm back, So it's a way where the total open honesty, the total space, in order for you to experience true intimacy, needs to be open from both ends.
Wow.
And it has to be honest. You cannot be like, oh, well, I'm just triggered AF, but I'm going to say thank you, because that's a disconnect.
And this is beautiful, because from everything that you've just talked about right now, it gives me also confidence to maybe even looking at this whole thing as a safe space. And one way that you can actually build this safe space from whatever you've said, I've understood, is have the communicative approach. Dare to speak and dare to get a feedback about it and dare to go out there and maybe better it. And if it's not your day, just accept it and then say thank you maybe.
Thank you. Or what do you need right now? Yeah. What do you need right now?
Or if you feel like you can't, just take a break and maybe come back to it.
There's always a way to win. And the win situation is a win-win situation where all needs are being met. And that's the success of that container. So when we're talking about conscious sexuality and successful sex, it's not about, okay, penetration, orgasm, the end. It's about how much fun did both of us have? How heard and felt and safe did we feel? How much did our trust grow? How much did we bond? Did we go through something really, really, really challenging and come out the other end? Did we feel that we both were able to feel better about ourselves? Do we feel empowered? These are some metrics that create a healthy way of now you're so accepted, so loved in the places that you're most vulnerable and most fearful. And you're like, wow, like I'm actually able to hold the space for myself. My partner's able to hold the space for myself. Now I can go out into the world and do these things with less fear, with more conviction, with more force and power that is coming from a place of true embodiment as opposed to just pushing energy.
Right. And everything that you say is a conviction or is a proof or an evidence to the fact that how you can actually harness into this sexual energy by putting in the effort, daring, and also being mindful in that space and creating that safe space in which you can operate so that you can use that energy to go out there and chase goals.
Chase goals, do whatever it is that you want. And then just do the reps, do the communication reps, do the presence reps, do the reps of looking into each other's eyes and not wanting to run away reps.
I like the way you associate this with reps as an it just makes it.
It's just easy. Do 2 sets of this, 2, 3 sets of that, but it doesn't and do 4 sets of, okay, like let's be mindful of where is our pleasure right now. So then it becomes normalized.
Right. You run this beautiful programs on sexual liberation.
Yes.
What is that all about?
So my background is actually, we didn't even talk about this, but like my background is actually from corporate marketing to business coaching to transformation, and then creating this beautiful system that we've run over 800 times at events, at Wonderfruit, at even doing it from the perspective of public speaking at universities in Singapore and the US. And Sexual Liberation Program is all about creating sovereignty and freedom in our bodies, in our ability to face ourselves, in our empowerment, in our prosperity, which is our wealth. I ran a summit called Synchronistic Wealth, where we marry both the spiritual, energetic, transformational aspects with business, with embodiment. Wow. And so we're looking at a whole person success, a whole multidimensional version of what wealth in all of these areas look like. And we liberate ourselves by being hyper mindful of every thought that comes into our brain and doing house cleaning on that. And then looking at the ability to be as effective as possible to eliminate everything that's not contributing and focusing on things that are contributing and just hacking it that way.
I love the way you use that word multidimensional. Would you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. So we can look at dimensions as physical dimension. So action, strategies, business plans, and things that are requiring structure and real world 3D actions are in the physical world. Physical world can also include body. Mental is how our brains are being wired. Neuroplasticity lies in this place where we can change our minds through intention, we can heal. Psychological attachments to things that are unhealthy, triggers, traumas, these are all like in the brain because it's no longer happening physically, but it's still happening somewhere, and that's in the brain psychological dimension. Energetic dimension is a space where there's a little bit of physical, a little bit of physical, you can feel the energy run through your body, it's a sensation, a little bit of psychological, but also a grander scheme of where your essence, your source, your spirit, that part of you that is beyond lies. That place is a place of impact, a place of what is your purpose here? What's your existence about? And who are you? Identity level. So when you're connecting both who you are, what your gifts are naturally, with your brain without things that are uncontributive, which we have a lot of tools to get rid of, and your body, that you're looking at your existence on a multiple dimensional level. And so when we're not fixing anything, but when we're unlocking and we're doing sort of pulling out things that are not contributive, we're looking at it, okay, where does it live? How do we get there? What are all the little dendrites that it connects to? What are all the neural pathways? And how do we rewrite all of those so that it fits who we naturally are? What's the most energetically efficient way for us to run our lives in a way that we don't waste energy?
Right. And what are some of the tools that you actually teach in these sessions?
We have a system that we've developed over the last 7 years. I've been in this field for about 15 years, and it's called the Unique Magnetic Momentum. Your unique magnetic momentum. It's a 4-step process, and it is a combination. It's a system where it's an eyes-closed meditative system where I take you through removing hundreds of blocks in one session, and it's using breathwork, mindfulness, awareness, consciousness, and neuroplasticity.
Wow.
And Gestalt as well for certain Gestalt therapy, which is basically going back in time to remove and to reconcile with inner child or past experiences. And all of that is done through a 4-step process, which is basically clarity, being clear about what we want as a result, clearing all the things that are in our way, and then receiving, which is basically connecting to the identity, to the state of what we want, and then taking action so that we're going into all of the dimensions, and then we're going to bring it down to the physical.
And the first one that you mentioned was
clarity.
How do we bring in clarity?
Clarity is the absence of noise.
Okay. Talk to me more.
So if a ocean has rapids and a tempest that's crazy going through a storm, and your life is so busy doing all these different things, how can we still everything? So our clarity is not the result of brain thinking, but isn't a result of awareness.
And is there ways in which you have used and which you advocate to bring in this awareness?
Breath work is a powerful one. Intending to be clear and to get rid of everything that's in the way of clarity in the moment. And so having a notepad, quickly writing down everything that's on your mind and literally just burning it, dealing with each one to knock it out of your mind so that you can come back to presence and clarity.
And then that brings us on to the second area, which is, you said, mentioned, was clearing.
Yes.
So once you have a clarity on what is the direction that you want to head towards, and maybe adding a purpose or a meaning to it, then what does the clearing part of it look like?
Okay, so maybe I did a little bit of both in the first point. But yes, once you have exactly where you want to go, so clarity for where you want to go in health and love and business, in your intimate relationships, once you know that's the point, then you look at, okay, what are all the unconscious, subconscious judgments, rejections, maybe experiences, past experiences, or any possible thing that's hidden in your psyche that could be blocking trust, communication, connection, or any of those safety portions to create that. And then you clear that through the process we talked about, the unique magnetic momentum process. And then once you clear that, you literally can't hear anything because no thoughts are going through your mind except the ones where you're directing it. It's so silent. You don't hear negative criticism or anything like that. And when you hear that, you just throw it out. And in that space, then you're ready to receive and you're ready to download the new program of where you want to go.
Right. So are there some tools that people could use to bring about or carry out this clearing exercise?
The tool that I like to do, so I have I think hundreds of videos on YouTube and also Insight Timer. So just listen to those and follow it because it's a combination of 33 different modalities embedded already in it. So there are a lot of tools and each tool has its own functions. And so in that recording or in those different types of recordings, you will get a selection of multiple tools.
Okay. And the third step that you mentioned in the whole process was?
Receiving and choosing.
Receiving and choosing. How can we engage in that step?
Choosing is freedom. So realizing that in every second you have a choice. It's awakening yourself in every moment and being so hyper aware that you can, okay, like right now I can choose to look into your eyes. I can choose to be here. I can choose to think about in the next moment. I can choose, like you're choosing every single place where you're putting your attention to. And so that's choosing. Receiving is really about now I'm not only receiving information for this moment, but I'm receiving a block of information. I'm receiving, okay, what am I looking to achieve this quarter? And I'm going to receive it. It may not be in exact words yet or exact thought forms yet, but I'm receiving the essence of it and the intention of it. So Einstein said that, when you solve a problem, you can't think about the problem in the same frequency as when the problem was created. Right. And so what you're essentially doing is you're receiving what potential there is and from an energetic field. Right. And then your body is going to translate it into psychological words before it even becomes words. And that way, and then eventually, as you're having a journaling practice, you will then, if you want to boil it down to a practice, then you'll start noticing, okay, these ideas are starting to come through. Maybe you're sleeping and ideas come through. So then it will have a trickle down effect of then becoming concrete. And that way you're actually getting ideas that are not hashed out from the past, and you're actually creating some original ideas that maybe is not just a computer generated from I was like AI of your brain, but it's the brain functions of whatever is it's not from a database, it's from something beyond.
People can actually tap into this by infinite some beautiful practices, as you mentioned already, like journaling, mindfulness, but also having the intention and going through the receiving process, which is something that I teach as well. It's a breathwork process that connects you to that space of where you are connected to a place of ideas and creativity that is not unfiltered from your little doors in your brain. And the noises.
Right.
And the fourth one, as you mentioned?
It's action.
Wow.
Because now you have your action, go take it. Because if you don't take it, then you're going to stay in the same rut.
So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Go.
Yeah, okay. So an amazing process to
Yes.
get into an action stage. And I think this, in many ways, I think this is a practice where, personally for me, I don't know if I'm doing this correctly, but it's something that I kind of plug it in the mornings.
Yeah.
So every day in the morning,
Yeah.
I kind of like, of course, you wake up, your cortisol levels are right up
Yeah.
there. It is the natural state of anxiety.
Yeah.
And then it's about just bringing it back, achieving a little bit of clarity.
Yeah.
And maybe how I do that is bring about a meditative practice. Not look at my phone consciously,
Yeah.
bring about a meditative practice. I do journal at times, but the days I do journal, I know the impact of that. And when I reflect on days that I don't, and I'm like, wow, I know exactly why this didn't happen. And receiving. Another way, like you mentioned, like tapping into how you can receive is breath work,
Breath work, yes.
meditative work, or even journaling.
Or yeah, the receiving process is like there's like a series of questions that you ask yourself. I think a series of 20 questions that I have, and it talks about your potential, what questions you could be asking yourself. Like if you already had what you want, like what would that be like? What is the energy, frequency, and awareness that you would have if you already have this? What am I not aware of that if I were to be aware of that I would have this? There's like so many things. Like what would it be if it were more organic, natural? Like you're receiving all of these information,
Right.
And so that's asking big questions that allow you to be exploring already in that state. And that is a beautiful practice that allows you to think outside of your box.
Amazing. And another area
Yeah.
or work that you do is working with some leaders.
Yes, we love leaders.
And personally, for me, my whole take on leaders is that if you're an individual
Yes.
and you wake up in the morning and you got dreams, you are a leader.
Yes.
You don't need to be a CEO. You
No.
don't need to be running a multi-million-dollar corporation.
You don't need to be
or-
on the face of a magazine.
Absolutely.
There can be silent leaders.
And in every one of us is a leader. But then, of course, we can choose to be a good leader. And just like every other leader could choose to be a good leader, you got to go out there and acquire the tools, maybe, manage emotions, and create an action plan that actually fosters or paves your way towards success. In that way, what you could do or possibly would do is inspire yourself, motivate yourself to do more, and also inspire people around you. And in itself, you are a leader.
Yes.
What do you think is going wrong in today's leaders?
Oh my gosh, I love the topic of success because like we were describing earlier, success is totally self-defined. You don't have to adopt
And this is one of the reasons why
anyone.
I tell everybody out there has to wear that leader hat, even though you're not, because you're chasing that one thing every big leader is chasing, or leading corporate organizations or CEOs are chasing, is success. So every person out there is a leader. Tell me more about what is going wrong in the leadership realm.
I mean, chasing the wrong goal, right? Like, oh,
Okay.
I climbed up on the ladder, but it's on the wrong wall, And so that could be it. Or perhaps it is about, there's so many leaders that I work with and each one has a different one. A lot of them, once they get to a stage of success, they're like, what's next, right? So not being connected to a deeper depth of what their inner being, their source, their spirit is speaking through, like not having that relationship on a level that is so like you're co-creating with your spirit. That's another thing that I see that people can
Right.
gain so much support and success from themselves for. And then also neglecting the area of intimacy and relationships and the level of vulnerability that you can be in order to create extraordinary love, and using love as a fuel. We were talking about using intimacy as a fuel to find what the next thing is. And so it's about like to summarize, it's the sort of like the neglect of the nuances and the subtleties in connection that can really reveal so many potent jewels that will spark more inspiration. The self-talk, there is
Right.
still negative self-talk, even in
Absolutely.
the most incredible human beings and not doing thorough enough healing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just about realizing that there are more ways that there are deeper, more effective ways that you can show up even better and even more in your body when you're healing those areas. And then trusting that your wholeness and fullness without programmed behaviors in the past will lead you there. So how you're doing success in the past is not going to take you into your next success, because that is already comfort zone and habitual way of doing things. So to get a breakthrough into the next phase, it's really to let go.
Let go of those things that serve you and bring in new tools.
Let go of the places that, how do I say it? Of assumed patterns of behaviors that led you to success. And realize that there are new places that you can grow, even in the places that have brought you success before.
Right. Is there any, I would love, because, I always look at myself as a leader too, and always aspiring and always intending to do better in that space.
Yeah.
Is there any stories that you have with coaches or with clients that you have worked?
Stories. There's so many. I think I remember just from the top of my head, there's this one person, we'll call him Zach. Let's talk about Zach.
All right.
So he came to me with wanting to experience sex in a whole new way. He wanted to feel sexually liberated, and he had erectile dysfunction and performance anxiety, but which he didn't even tell me about till months later.
Yeah,
but
it's an area where, let's be honest about it, men are not vulnerable enough to talk about this, especially if you are at a leader position.
Super successful,
It doesn't come easy.
Not at all. So he ran 2 companies in 2 different countries, and basically we worked on what was the root cause of, this, what we label as dysfunction. What turns out is that when he learned the tools of what we talked about in terms of the clarity of where he wanted to go in life and what he needed to clear, receiving where he wanted to be, and then choosing each action, he was able to not only, and attunement and communication, he was not only able to get in touch with himself, get in touch with his pleasure, but was able to connect with his partners in a way that was mind-blowing.
Wow.
Performance never became an issue again. And at the same time, he was able to observe his mind at such a clarity that he was able to create the most profound experiences with new partners, long-term partners, and also people who he just met as business partners. And that is obviously not all in the erotic segment, but it's all in the appropriate levels of engagements. And in addition to that, the work made so much impact on his life that he then translated that into creating more positive impact in the world by turning that into curriculum for youth in the nation. And he worked with Prime Minister on that.
Wow. And it truly goes back to what you started by saying, how you could use conscious sexual energy as a cabinet or as a resourceful energy that you can dial into when you need it, even in the outside world.
That, and it's also the fact that he unlocked these areas in himself, that when that was unlocked in the context of the most vulnerable place that we can be with, which is our own sexuality, then everything else unlocks. It's the linchpin. It's the domino. It's the thing that creates the biggest shift, which is why even after 7 years of doing business coaching and transformational coaching and dance, I realized that sexuality holds the key to the deepest door that we don't want to open. And when you open that, everything else starts shifting.
You achieve a state of freedom that is energizing compared to if you'd shut that door and left it in, which would be an energy drainer.
Which would be a place that you got to walk around all the time, for sure. We have Jeff, we have Matt. Jeff is someone who is emotionally unavailable, very common for Asian successful men because it's.
How would you define that state?
Emotionally unavailable means that that they're not in touch with how they're feeling at every moment, or the vocabulary of emotions are angry, sad, happy, just a few, but maybe not being communicated, not able to fully hold space for another person to have their full expression of their emotional capacity. And that was really challenging him because the love of his life was about to leave.
Wow.
And because she didn't feel connected or heard. And because he was so successful on the outside, it was very difficult for him to understand, like, how could this be so hard on that level? And it was not that difficult. We have this fallacy that, traditionally Asian men or men in general are taught to not be in touch with their emotions in like the last generation, but this generation and even kids this generation are so much more in touch. And so when we're able to unlock all of that programming and habitual conditioning from his past and able to get him in touch with that, not only did he access emotions, he accessed aliveness, he accessed a flow of energy that connected him so deeply with his partner that his partner was like, in the 14 years that we've been together, like, this is the first time that our sex has been like, I felt him. And it was an incredible testament to no matter how long your connection has been, there is always room to grow. Pleasure and sexuality has an infinite ruler. There is no end. And
that is an area that you completely recommend that people tap into and work towards bettering in order to achieve success in the outer world.
I truly believe that this is an area that if you want to be more alive, if you want to feel more fulfillment, more connection, and that feeling of whole, vibrating whole peace.
Right.
This is an incredible area. You don't have to do it with another person. You can do it with yourself, but to hold that space for yourself is beyond, it's beyond anything that I've experienced.
And if I could just put an analogy to it, that in my own life is like, I just look at it as a mindful exercise session.
It is
where
totally that.
You could go to the gym and do just random motions, all right, and feel good for 2 seconds, or you can actually reap a whole plethora of benefits by being in there and mindfully engaging in exercise and in movement, being there to ensure and also mindfully ensuring that blood's flowing to those parts that you're actually stressing out and foster growth. And if we were to just use or look at sex or sexual energy, something of that sort, and if you were to just look at sex with the intent of tapping into that sexual energy, which holds immense amount of benefits from what I've heard from you and the kind of transformation that you've been able to achieve with the clients, you just have to be more mindful, more present, and create a safe space.
Absolutely. Mindfulness is key. You can definitely execute any of these things in a non-mindful and animalistic way, and that's not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to feed a addiction from a place of scarcity. But if you're coming from a place of abundance and a place of I'm already full because I have filled my cup, my mindful cup of pleasure, and I am here to share that with another person, that is where the magic is. Yeah, Veronica. I can talk about Veronica.
Wow, we would love to listen to something from a women's side.
Yeah, she's single and she was disconnected with her desire. We had this, I do these retreats every year, and we do them in San Diego, San Francisco, Ubud, Bali, and
wow.
And this one retreat that she was at, there was a moment where we had to look into the other person's eyes and share what our desires are, and they were just a proxy for the partner that is ideal or is a contributed partner in their lives. And a lot of women are not connected to their desire. And there is nothing wrong with that. It's just that we've never had the vocabulary or the neural pathway to realize what actually is what I desire. Maybe I desire all 5 love languages being communicated to me at the same time. I want touch here, how heavy, what pressure, what stroke. I want words of affirmation. I'll tell you exactly what I want you to say to me. I want this. I want a certain attunement in terms of touch, like in terms of connection and in terms of dance. in the way that the body is moving, or I just simply want to be held. To make me feel safe, I want you to let me know that even though I said this and this, you still love and accept me, and I want you to say it if it's true. And so these are very specific desires that one can say, but not everyone has access to them. So we went through a lot of different practices to help her access that. And after doing that over the course of the program, she not only felt sexually liberated from a perspective of being connected to her desire, but she was able to speak up and empower herself in leadership roles in her company in a way that she was not following her old pathway of success, but she was able to show up and connect to the team members in her direct team in a whole new level where people actually felt like they could connect with her. And so that's another way of how, when she uncovered things that blocked her from her desire, actually empowered her in a way that has ripple effects on the outside. So I'm all about empowering inside to the outside. And, and we have many examples of this. Billionaires, like, $500 million projects that are just being fueled by that person feeling alive, feeling confident, and empowering themselves inside out and becoming a much better person and having relationships flourish in a way that is so much more heartwarming. And don't get me wrong, this is not like a one-shot complete thing. This is an ongoing process.
Right.
There's a concept that I call so far. And this so far is basically, hey, this is going so well. Like, our connection is going so well so far.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. And I love this. And this peak experience is wow, so far.
Right.
Which means that you put away the pressure of it needing to hit that 10 out of 10 every single time. And you don't want to put pressure when it comes to sensuality and sexuality.
That is such an amazing take on it. And again, what I would just like to highlight is that it doesn't matter how higher up in the hierarchy that you are as a leader. This is an area that we can all struggle with, and it can have a direct impact on the output of the role or the position that you are in charge of. And since it's not a talked about topic or as a tool, as many other areas, it is always. And I feel more comfortable if this is an area where I was struggling with as a leader, I would come to a coach like you, because there seems some fine tools that one can dial into to optimize that area of scarcity or lack. Am I saying that right?
Totally. Why are we chasing the things we're chasing? We want more and 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 more.
Right.
Right? And there is something there that is what's driving you. Are you being driven from a place of lack, or are you being driven by a place of inspiration? None of that is wrong. It's just understanding.
So if you were to give advice to, let's put it this way, 3 steps to peak performance for leaders out there in Hong Kong and in Asia Pacific region, what would be the top 3 advices?
Redefine success.
Okay.
And whether that is in your leadership in your public life or in your private life.
And both are connected.
And both are connected.
Right.
They're connected to your overall well-being of success.
And it is necessary for you to address and maybe even redefine success in both these areas. And be open to talk about it too.
To be open to talk about it. You have the ability to talk about it. Talk about your success in an outside world. You also have the ability to address stuff that you might not have addressed yet. It's the unknown. And then learn to attune. Attuning, so taking a pause to attune to your physical sensations and being aware of your emotions when it comes to people that matter to you. And communicate. Communicate in a way that addresses not only what needs to be done from a practical level, but communicate from a place of being able to foster connections where you choose to put your energy in to create that safe space for true heart-to-heart communication in the places that you want. And then the last one is expand your ability to have the capacity to hold pleasure. Right. And this is slowing time down, having each particle of your body being tuned into the frequency of pleasure, and seeing how you can hold your partner's pleasure, your pleasure, starting with yourself first when you're even self-pleasuring, and being able to learn how your nervous system is responding to pleasure. And that's also an attunement. Attunement is also about understanding your nervous system so that you can be tuned into the other person's nervous system, so that sometimes you know what they need or what they don't want before they even know. And if you can even pause and stop going forward before they speak their boundary, just by observing their body's response and their nervous system's slight tweak or slight adjustment, and you check in with your partner and you're like, hey, like, I noticed that you moved a little bit, or that your body might not be ready for penetration yet. Like, am I reading you that correctly? Do we need to just, do you want to just cuddle? Like, is there something else you want? And if they're able to be like, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. Like, I didn't even notice that. The amount of trust that gets built at that moment is like, The Sims, when it's like plus, green, is like eye rockets, that your next session and like the trust in general for the container becomes so crazy beautiful that it just energizes both of you. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe we're both like in this space and we're really, really holding each other. We're really, really there for each other. And that's love.
And I think I'm just going to end it at that. And that is love.
That is love. You're
love.
there. You care about their well-being. You're
and
there
success,
for them.
when many times we would want to redefine success, could be to, bring in that element of love.
And then that love is true love. And when you can show up from a place of true, non-judgmental love, where you can hold the other person's well-being and also a safe space, that ripples out and that creates impact, and that creates and rejuvenates their success, which then goes back into your sexual energy or your energy and awareness and consciousness. And then that goes back into work, and that becomes a positive feedback loop that is a spiraling up effect and has so much potential for growth, healing, and superhuman powers.
Absolutely. It definitely is, I must say, it is an area that I have not delved into, but with everything that you have told, it's an area which I feel like, I should start working towards with a very open mindset and with a very communicative approach, and by being in the moment, if I can say. And it's okay to be distracted, maybe voice it out, but come back into the moment and try to better this so that I could go out of my bedroom and be a better person and achieve so much more by fixing. I wouldn't even say fixing. That would be a wrong word.
It's like enhancing
my relationships and my actions and my approach towards things in my bedroom.
It's a phenomenal piece to hone in on.
Thank you so much, Hani. It was a pleasure hosting you on board, and there was so much learning that I'm going to walk away with. And this, I must say, is one of those podcasts where I had to completely sit back as a spectator with a lot of nervousness, because, hey, this is an area that is less talked about, and that's one of the beautiful things that we have done on this podcast. We've actually dared to talk about it and have an amazing transformational perspective from your side with all the learnings and all the teachings and all the transformation that you've done by yourselves to your clients.
Yeah, and I just want to thank the listeners too for sticking in through this whole podcast, and I hope that this really makes a big difference in how you view your intimacy and how you view your relationships to yourself and to your partners. Thank you so much.